Hi, I'm Dr. Vonda Wright, and this is Hot for Your Health. Join us for conversations on the bleeding edge of science, health, and culture as we bring you tech innovators, thought leaders, and the movers and shakers who are transforming science fiction into your new health reality. Hey, I'm Dr. Vonda Wright, your orthopedic surgeon and mobility doc, and today I'm really honored to bring to you a new friend of mine, a new colleague, Hubert Payne, who plays a variety of roles. He's not only a world-class musician, which we can talk about anytime if you get a demonstration, but also the director of performance here at the Lake Nona Performance Club, where he uses you. I'm speaking about you like you're not here, where you use your skills, not only in strength and conditioning, but also in a very unique way with experiential therapy, where you pull out of athletes their high capacity to performance in a way that's not usual, right? Usually mindset training is about talking to yourself on the field, but your approach is deeper than that.
Yes.
You and I have talked a lot about the programs that I run and why sometimes people start so motivated. They're like, I'm going to do it, right? And it's January now, so lots of people, you hear the clumping in the back of our gym. People are out there trying to do it. But what happens after 21 days? Or what happens after they swipe their credit card, pay a lot of money for training, and then they go back and they relive the last 6 months of their lives, which was the same as the previous 6 months of their lives. And so years pass by, and we don't reach the full capacity that we have the inkling in our minds.
Absolutely.
So you and I talk about that, like, why do we know what to do?
Come on.
And we won't do it.
That's
Sometimes
right.
after paying a lot of money.
That's right.
So what's up with that, Hubert?
Yeah. So this is really fun for me to talk about, because I'm a performance junkie.
Right, on stage, right.
Yeah, being a musician, a former collegiate football player. I even view being a husband and a father as a version of performance, right?
We can talk about that on another one. Yeah, that's amazing.
There's a bar, right? There's expectations. And I use performance as a window. It's more of an opportunity. If it's performance, I can go back, I can adjust, I can be self-aware, I can gain more knowledge and then show up better in a relationship. Yeah. So I view performance, in every direction in my life, even when it comes to my experience with myself. Right. So I've been exposed to some really unique therapeutic concepts that help people through traumatic situations, right? So people who have lost, family members, dealing with physical, sexual abuse. I was exposed to that along with being going through my ministry phase. I'm still in ministry, but I was engulfed in trying to be a pastor to do weddings and funerals, right? So in that season, I started drawing some lines in that therapeutic work to performance. And I started realizing, wow, if therapy is going back in your story and figuring out why you're showing up the way you are, coaching is, I want to perform this way. I want it to look like this. Somewhere in the middle is where we can have real impact, because you might have great ideas about how you want to show up, how you want your body to look, how you want to feel, who you want to be for the people you love and yourself. But the thing is, the stories that drive our behavior, right? If we don't address those, we're going to have the same posture with a new idea.
So why do we consistently, I want to put this together in my mind. Why, if we have an idea of who we want to present ourselves at, the capacity we think we can live to, how we want to feel, why, in this country in particular, are we always looking behind us and worshiping our youth? Or why do we talk about the glory days and it's not today? Because I feel like what you're saying, we're not reaching the capacity we think we want. Something's holding us back. And yet we continually look back to that. And you and I have talked about, I don't know, is that the last time you felt safe about that?
Yeah, that's right. That's good.
Because why will not people do what they commit to do when they say they will, or when they engage me, or when they engage themselves? What is that?
Yeah. So my biggest hope in this work and the conversation we're having, and what I feel like I'm called to do, is to give people power, right? So this morning I looked in the mirror and I wiped my face when I got out the shower. And I noticed as my hands went across my beard, I had a bunch of gray hairs.
Oh, yes, right? You do.
And I immediately thought, my power is in the narrative that I choose about those gray hairs, right? So the narrative that I'm choosing to live from is, man, I've been gifted with life, right? I've been gifted with experiences. I've been gifted with enough health to make it to 40 years old right now, right? Well, all kinds of amazing experiences, some tough ones, but I'm still here, right? And that's a narrative. So what I find, narratives drive behavior, right? And the way that I like to intervene to help people is, what are the narratives that are driving your behavior, number one? And then empower them to understand you literally have the control to change the narrative. You can't change the content. You can't change what happened to you, but you can take the message you receive from it. And that's how you start organizing your internal environment to move from power.
Give me an example of, I'll just take somebody I work with historically or recently, right? They're showing up, they're really motivated. They have all these things, right? Maybe they survived breast cancer, or maybe, they had a health scare, they're on a bunch of meds. And we do a lot of hard work together. We spend 2.5 days doing testing. We make a whole plan. And then as I'm presenting the plan, often with each step in the plan that they know is going to get them where they have said, because we start out our sessions with, let's create a vision. Who do you want to be? It's a reflection of who you are. It's not an unrealistic fantasy, right? When I create a vision, when I talk about my vision, when I started writing books, I always talk about the fact that, Hubert, I can sing in the shower and a church choir, but I will never be Pat Benatar. Or, so my vision for the future has to be realistic about who I am. But when I start taking people from their vision, putting in some data, creating a plan with concrete, actionable steps, I say, okay, step 1, you have said this. This is the first step to getting there. Oh, I'm so busy, I can't do that. Or, oh, I don't like sweet potatoes. Or the litany of excuses that we immediately go to, that I don't think it's that they don't like sweet potatoes. I don't think it's that they don't have time. We're just jumping back to protect ourselves.
That's right. It's a good word. That's a good word.
Say, you cannot excuse me. I've been doing this 30 years. I've heard the excuses. So I need to go help people get back to what I think you're going to talk and weave here.
Yes.
Jumping back to really.
So you said a really good word, protection. It's about safety. What I find, there are a few things I assume about people, and I try to get people to buy in if we're working together. Number one, we are never broken, right? We may experience feeling fractured in relationship, but we're never broken. And another thing that I assume is that we perfectly got here, right? So I can perfectly, if I show up to Dr. Wright and I'm motivated to do what she's telling me I can do, to go live from where I want to live from and how I want to live, I perfectly got here. Now,
what does that mean? Perfectly got here.
That means that the way that I'm organizing my stories and my internal environment got me here.
We got to this place, whether you like this place or not.
That's right.
Oh, it worked.
It worked. Now, if you want to show up from a different different place, right? You got to be willing to challenge your narratives, right? And you do that by visiting, get curious about, when did I feel safe, right? So, for example, and I use a lot of therapeutic modalities and examples when it comes to performance, because what I think happens is people don't approach performance internally just as intense as they should. So something happens to me, like for me, I have a narrative around working out from sports, right? I gave a lot of energy to it. I mean, I gave about as much energy as I have to give for most of my life.
Yep.
But then when I didn't go pro after college, it broke me. So my narrative was wrapped up in my ego in that situation. So the last time I felt safe was when I decided I'm not working out. I'm not going to give energy to that thing.
There's no chance in the disappointment of
it won't
not
hurt.
getting to do what you wanted to do.
That's right. And it won't hurt me if I don't have anything to do with it, right? Now, if I'm reparenting my internal environment and I'm doing my work, I'm revisiting those narratives. Even though I felt safe in that moment by protecting myself by just not even looking at a weight room, what if I can create a different narrative? Now I have 6 children. Now I have an opportunity to inspire a community.
That's right.
I'm in a very unique position, right? So now that I've created new narratives, it's easier for me to walk into the gym.
Gotcha.
Right?
You've changed, completely.
Right. So
reframed it.
I reframed it.
Yeah.
And that's powerful, right? But if you never reframe the narratives, your internal environment will be organized with protectors. You mentioned a very important word. So we all are walking around with our protectors leading us, right?
But the hard part is, what are the steps for unprotecting ourselves?
Okay, so here's the fun part. I like to organize our internal environment as a family, right? If there's a family and there's one family member going rogue, you don't kick that family out, that member. You right-size them with love. You give them the attention that they need, right? So this work requires a lot of being curious with, man, who are my members? Who are my parts inside? How do I make them feel felt, seen, and heard? What are the messages I'm getting, right? Then you have more space internally to organize how you want to show up, right?
Give me an example, like, because, we're in a health and fitness thing.
Yeah.
And I call what I do strong and courageous.
That's
so part
good.
of the strong is physically strong, throwing plates around,
right.
doing zone 2, protecting sleep, anti-inflammatory nutrition. This courageous part is this part. So give me examples if it's something as seemingly as easy as lifestyle.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's not easy, is it? Or we'd all be doing it. But it's not war. It's not, we're not solving world peace, or maybe we're solving internal peace. I don't know. But
I think my philosophy is that battle is so intense and it's not handled with enough care, right? We look at, a political argument and we invest so much into it. And I just wish people would value, man, I have 2 conflicting parts. And if I can get them on the same page, I can show up and make so much impact that the political environment wouldn't even matter.
Right.
So the thing is, our parts are not just running rogue. I believe we're already equipped for healing, right? We all have an undamaged healing center, no matter what you believe, right? We have it when we were children, we were creative, right? Before we started learning, oh man, I can only go so far with that, or getting certain messages, you're not smart enough to do that. You're not big enough. You failed before, so just, play small ball here. Before you experience all that, you had an undamaged healing center. You were creative. You were curious, right? There were no limits. You have to regulate a child with highs and lows with emotion, right? You got to calm them down. And I think that undamaged healing center is the key to us showing up, like getting back to that. But as an adult, that's power, right? So if I can tap back into, you know what, there are no limits. Wait a minute, that person told me I can't do this because that was my vision. It wasn't theirs. They weren't supposed to understand. So let me go back to that, right? And I really push back on, people that say this is not as serious, right? Because it's you. It's your relationship with you. How are you showing up for yourself? What's more serious than that?
You're right. Yeah, world peace is not more serious than internal peace.
That's right.
And working on you.
That's right.
But I find that in working with people, especially in women, we're usually the last priority. So the internal narrative is that everybody in the single world is more important than me. And we hate ourselves for that, because when you look in the mirror, especially in midlife, and a lot of the work I'm doing now, and women say a few things. They say, I don't recognize myself anymore. I don't like what I see.
Yep.
I am falling apart, and I think I'm going crazy. They're assigning narratives to whatever is going on in their lives that may or may not be true. They're not going crazy. They're not falling apart. They're in pain, but they're not falling apart. They may not recognize themselves in the mirror, right? And they may hate that, but they hate the look, maybe not themselves, or maybe themselves. So what I really find people need help with is not desiring, but is believing and acting. And
yeah.
how do we unprotect ourselves enough to take the first step forward? How do we remove the gate?
Yeah. So the narrative, right? I think society gives women a narrative, and I'm thinking about my own wife. Who's a mother of 5 under 11, right? And the most brave and courageous thing I believe you can do is take care of someone else. Like, she sacrificed her life, take care of our children, so I can be on the road, play music,
do podcasts on a Saturday morning.
On a Saturday morning, right? But when I look at her, I see bravery. And a lot of times she's like, Hubert, like, I don't even know who I am anymore. And I'm like, I understand to a certain extent. But when I look at you, I'm pulling power. I'm inspired to do whatever I need to do to just try to play ball on your level, right? Like that's what
that is interesting perspective.
Yeah.
You want to reach her standard, and she thinks that just because she's so surrounded by 5 little people and the day-to-day of taking care of a big family, that's not a standard. But your perspective, the narrative, is that is the strongest point.
Absolutely. So what I've done is I've challenged my narrative of what bravery and being courageous is. The most courageous thing you can do is pour into someone else. That's real love without limits, right? In a healthy way, of course. And that's what she does, right? So to me, I'm like, how many jobs do I need to do? How deep do I need to dig in my own skill set to show up so we're all okay and safe, right?
That is an interesting perspective. The question is, how do we help women see their own bravery?
That's right.
And how do we help, and it's not just women who do my programs, lots of men do too, but how do we help them identify the bravery in themselves to know that they're brave enough to remove the barrier, open the gate that.
So first off, taking agency in who is controlling the narrative.
We are not the victims. This is what I say. We are victims of the passage of time.
That's right.
You're not the victim of whatever thing is the narrative in your head.
Right.
You can change it, is what you're saying.
Absolutely. Because what I think happens, men and women allow society to dictate their value, validation, how excellent they are, and certain standards, and, keeping up with the Joneses and all that. And I'm like, when I look at my wife, I'm like, you're a superstar. Like, I've been around stars. I've been around Chris Stapleton and made a record with Pharrell for a year and all the best of the best. And I understand that. She's a star.
Yeah.
That's superstar material. A different stage, right? And so I try to help her take agency in a narrative, like, hey, who's dictating the way you're feeling about yourself? What bar, who established that bar? And that comes back to, I'll say this as quickly as I can, but what I see a lot of time in my coaching, most of the time, I put things in 3 boxes, right? People experience fracture in 3 ways in relationship: with other people, with themselves, or their higher power. Pretty much most people I've ever worked with. And I think taking a step back, new year, I signed up for Dr. Wright. Like, she's getting me a plan, but taking a step back, where am I experiencing fracture in those 3 boxes? And who's dictating the narrative? Is it me?
Yeah.
or something I read in a magazine. Because I noticed, like, my wife is a consumer. She's reading and I think a lot of times we got to take responsibility for that as well, right? Like, who am I subscribing to?
Oh, what magazine? Not magazine, but
That's right.
yeah, what content? Yeah,
That's right.
exactly. Even internal content doesn't have to be the
Yeah,
Cosmo. It's
yeah,
what we're reading in
absolutely,
our own brain.
absolutely.
Yeah. I often say, not so much to myself anymore, because I've done the work for this. I've said it recently to my children, is you can tell your brain what to do. You don't have to spin out. You don't have to accept what's going on. You can just stop it.
That's right.
You know, it's just like, I rebuke you, Satan.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, right.
You know, I have been known to say that.
Yeah.
But you can stop the narrative that's spinning out. The narrative that those were the glory days, that I'm so far gone, I cannot ever get to the capacity that I desire or have a faint flicker of hope. Time is not really a barrier. People do what's important to them, right?
That's really good.
There is no real barrier. I love the concept of agency, the power to decide, because we've had the agency to tell ourselves things that limit us, and we reap the consequences of that.
That's right.
We have the same agency. These are the thoughts of another friend of mine, Juliana Hauser, Dr. Juliana Hauser. She has a whole 5-step thought process about agency, but she says that we have the power to decide, and we therefore get to accept the consequences of that agency.
That's good.
Right? Yeah. So the agency to decide, you're going to believe the internal narrative barriers you put, the consequences of that is living in a place that you don't like.
That's right.
The same agency, without assigning more value to it, the same agency to decide, now are the glory days, I get to decide the next step.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. A couple things. Number one, confidence is the memory of success.
What?
Confidence is the memory of success, right? Think about that. Now, what I find, a lot of people dismiss small wins, right? Especially women, to me. My wife, for example, I look at her, I'm like, you just got 5 kids ready to go to school, and you gave them all each a certain amount of energy, which that's a cost.
Yeah.
Right.
She gave them part of herself.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of times she dismisses that, maybe because she's comparing, oh, my mother did that for me. It's just to be expected.
Just basically.
Right.
Yeah.
But what happens is, in dismissing, you lose an opportunity for confidence. Right. So you can build on the confidence. Right. The confidence it's like a power up. It gives you you can get in the zone in a performance sense. Right.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us dismiss the small wins. Also, a huge part of this work is grace and compassion, right?
For others or ourselves?
For yourself. Because in order for you to dive in and start figuring out, which one of my parts are speaking right now, and you need to ask the question of, like, what happened to me? Like, this particular part, what happened? But approach it with, like, curiosity and compassion, and that will give you more space to live from that undamaged healing center.
So when you say parts, I want to clarify, are you talking about what part is speaking? The physical body part, the mind part, the spirituality part? What other parts are there?
Really good question. So the way that I like to explain the parts deal is, think about when you were a kid, you have a bus. You're driving your bus. And every interaction you have, all the times you receive love or didn't receive love, the way you learn to navigate your parents or your environment or your lack of parenting, right? Every time you had a win, big win, small win, expectations met, the messages you receive from people, different people in your life, they all get on your bus. Right? Now, we know a school bus is loud, and everyone's got something to say,
Mm-hmm.
Certain times, certain situations or people are louder than others, and they're influencing the driver, right? And that creates parts. Those are your parts.
How do we quiet ourselves enough to know, or listen hard enough to know who's yelling at the bus driver?
So that takes pausing, right? So when you pause, so think about if you're meditating, you want to pause and you just want to sit. Let me ask you this. What makes you feel like you're experiencing love? Think about a relationship you have, and you're like, man, I really feel like I'm experiencing love when this is happening.
Well, for me, I experience love my ego way and my real way. My ego way likes it a lot. When my husband compliments me or notices, he'll say things like, Vonda, I don't have to tell you you're beautiful. You know you're always beautiful. I'm like, well, okay, I can accept that, but I want to hear from you because I love you. But I really, and every person's experience of this is different, but I really feel love because I am a alpha woman. I can get shit done. I can and have taken care of things when I am safe and not of my own accord. Like I know that I am safe. Nothing is going to get to me because he stands in the gap, right? And that's just what our relationship is, but that's how I experience it.
Okay, that's really good. Think about what you just said and then take what you just mentioned, and think about just one of your parts. Your parts will experience love just like that. So how you show up for your part, make them felt seen and heard or hurt, right? You give them attention. You stand in the gap. That was so awesome what you said, and just so they can sit back and feel like, man, I'm being taken care of.
Well, I'm gonna extend that now that you've pointed this out to me, and extend it so people can have an example of in my own lifestyle. When I was 40, I still remember it. I was in the best shape of my life, training for triathlons, 90% body fat, lean. But I was just coming out of training, and listen, orthopedic training is traumatic. So physically, I was in the best shape and was so effing strong. Then I went through menopause and started losing my muscle mass. And I realized when I do shoulder surgery, I have to lift the patient, whether they're 10 pounds or 300 pounds. And so I squat below the bed, and it's like a reverse squat. I'm squatting already, and I lift the person up. I got to a place where I got too weak to do that easily. I have always been able to just pop up because I'm a muscly, strong person. That is safe to me. I can do my job. I am strong enough. No man has to be called into the room to lift my patient because I am strong enough. I got to this place of unsafety, and that has motivated me to get back to a place of safety by throwing weights around in this gym, in the edge gym.
Love that.
I am up there.
I love that.
With 45-pound plates on a bar so that I can get back to that place of safety, because I'm unsafe from a physical perspective when I am too weak to get out of emergencies or not be able to lift my patients. So if we're saying, when was the last time you felt safe physically? And it was when I was strong enough to do that. I became unsafe. I am motivated to get back to safety by taking action.
Yes.
So that I never want to feel that weak again. It took one weakness where I had to readjust and not be able to lift my patient to say, okay, if I don't do something, this is the strongest I'm ever going to be, and it's not strong enough. Is that the way to apply this?
Yes. So that's very good. A few things that came up for me when you were sharing that, which is awesome. If you think about muscle, right? The whole deal is you're breaking muscle fiber.
Oh, to build,
from stress. When it builds, when it heals, it builds back stronger, right? And what I just heard you share, the the best parts of us are the ones that don't allow us to feel comfortable, because they're saying, Vonda, Dr. Wright, we're better than this.
That's right.
You took control of the narrative, right? And then you had the awareness to say, this is where I felt safe. And then you built back stronger, right? So if we never experience fracture, we really never have an opportunity to grow into authentically who we are. And that's the opportunity in trauma, physically, spiritually, in relationship, right? Relationships mean more when you've gone through something, right? Because you actually have an opportunity to love instead of just saying, I love you. In this season in my life, it feels weird to tell someone I love you, because I've learned, oh man, I might feel like I love you, but the love really comes into play when I feel like you don't deserve it right now, but I'm going to treat you like I
love you anyway.
That's right. And when we can do that with ourselves, along with grace, that's power.
Yeah.
That's navigating safety, and it puts us in a power position where we can take agency, and then we can take, Dr. Wright's plan for me. I'm ready, and I can respond from power. I'm not responding from my protectors. I'm not responding from the posture that I showed up with, right? I'm actually honoring what I heard from my parts that told me to contact Dr. Wright, right?
So it's when I ask people to create a vision of how they want to be in the future, to motivate the work they're about to do, it needs to go a step further and not just ask them to say, what do you want? How do you want to feel? But the included in this vision casting then must be, who are your parts? Or who dwells inside you?
Right.
Who's on the bus with you?
What happened to me? Who's on my
What
bus?
happens?
What are my resources also?
Oh, what do I have to take down the barriers?
Yeah.
What are the barriers? I never ask people to identify their barriers. We skip that. Who do you want to be?
Yes.
Well, we have to, to know where how we get to the start, how we open the gate to start. We got to know what's in the way.
Yes.
That's harder work.
It's harder work.
That's the work that you do.
Because it's what's in the way is internal. And I like to use parts because it helps give you, you got a diagram mentally of what is in your internal environment. It's easier to see it. When you can see it, then you can manipulate it, right?
So when you ask people to diagram because if I'm asking people to create a vision and then we need them to diagram the parts, I mean, what is the exercise to do that? Because
here's all kinds of fun stuff.
Go do the parts.
So it's all kinds of fun stuff. So you can start here. I like to do letter writing.
To yourself?
From yourself, to yourself. And we get really creative with this, right? So imagine if you picked a part. First off, you want to be approaching that part with a ton of curiosity and grace. And remember, loving it in the right size. So you might have a part where you're like, man, this part is really my block. I'm going to write a letter to that part. Maybe I will embody that part and write a letter to myself. And what you find is your part was created to protect you. That's why you owe it love, right? It wasn't just created.
So you're not bullying.
No, you're not bullying a part.
You're not holding it back.
Empowering a part that was created to probably protect you when you weren't safe. That's where the safety part's really important.
So food could be that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
sitting around could be doing that.
Another, and we're really getting into it now. It's fun for me, but another role of parts. We call it. You have. They don't even. They're firefighters, right? Because they don't really care about the consequence. They're just gonna appease your internal environment. So it might be scrolling on my phone. It might be eating. It might be binge watching Netflix. It might be. It might be. It can be drugs, alcohol, name it. All kinds of different fire. So the firefighter is just going to come in and calm the system. So that becomes a pattern of behavior, right? So it doesn't really matter if Dr. Wright's amazing and gives me this plan if I have a pattern of a block from a firefighter. So what happens is you got one part that said we need to be better. We need to engage with Dr. Wright. but you got this whole pattern of behaviors from a firefighter and a part that, you know, last felt safe when you were 17, or last felt safe when you know, or had your first kid at 24, right? And then you've gone through all these things and you hadn't really focused on yourself because you've been worried about everybody else and taking care of everybody else. And your posture internally is the same as 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And you're not counting the small wins, and you're denouncing yourself, and you know, and it can become a mess, right? But the awesome thing about this is if you combine the external strategic method to figure out where is my body right now? What's a challenge that I have? Where do I want to be? Getting excited about that. And then you combine that with, I'm going to get into this internal work. Who's on my bus? I'm going to take agency and spending time with how I'm showing up for me, right? It doesn't mean that no one else matters and I was doing it wrong. There's all kinds of dynamics in between, right? So, yeah, I could talk about it all day.
I know. We could for a whole week, actually. Well, this is actually informational, but part of this is the work you're going to be doing in Lake Nona.
Yes.
The work we're going to be doing with retreats like Precision Longevity. Yes. Because I feel like the easy part is lifestyle prescription, what I do now, biomarkers, the precision lifestyle. The hardest is the mindset mobilization, which is what I call this, what we're doing. We're mobilizing our mindset to show up the way we desire.
That's right.
Because you know what, I was a nurse first, and one of the things we learn in nursing school is about end of life and how people feel at end of life. And one of the goals is not to get to the end of life regretting, never having met the capacity that you wanted, that you set for yourself. And maybe that starts as something as simple as, I have this barrier that's keeping me from being once again in the best shape of my life, strong enough to live with my patience, get out of any situation. I regret allowing myself to become a frail old woman because I didn't have the courage now to step over the gate or move past the firefighter. That's right.
That's right.
I feel like that's, for me personally, that's the perspective, and why I've worked so hard in the last year to get back to a place of acknowledging I'm capable, investing the time to be in the best shape of my life, like I was when I was 40. But now at 57, getting to do it with mindset mobilization, being a more whole person than I was when I was a young person. Probably a lot of 30-year-olds out there that got this straight when you were in your 20s, but not me. So at any age you can remove barriers, right? That's
why I love it. That's why I love this work, right? Any age. And a few things came up when you were talking. The creativity that you have and your heart position to want to help, I think, is so dynamic. And I appreciate that. Because where in the past where I've worked, it was more focused on the internal environment, but there was no external plan or physical component. And it works the same way. You get stuck if you're only, in a therapeutic space and not doing the things to take care of your body.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, right.
It's so important. And it almost like, it gives me chills and the hair on my arm stand up when I think about the collision of the power that's going to come from joining the two, which is the way that it should be. People say a holistic approach.
Whole person.
And then they'll leave the internal environment work at meditation.
Right. It's all, and nothing actionable.
Nothing actionable, right?
And you're still feeling lousy physically, even though you might be.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So this program is going to be dynamic.
Yeah.
It is that.
Excited.
Yeah.
Excited. Well, okay. I think we have hours and hours of more recording. Yeah. Actually, Hubert and I I'm going to break up this recording, but we're going to start a podcast.
Yes.
And this is like the intro, and we're going to, we'll use my examples. We can use your example. We can use other patient examples to work through the work and examine how to really live in peak performance. That's kind of cool, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Really
All
fun.
right. I'm Dr. Vonda Wright. See you next week.